Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Maud Cabot. Welcome to my apartment in New York. Come on in.
Tucked into a classic Upper East Side building sits the jewel box apartment of jewelry designer Maud Cabot. Her New York City home is a tribute to her mother, layered with inherited furniture, beloved books, and meaningful works of art that once filled her mother's home, creating a space where memory quietly lives on in every room.
And I wanted to be near not only her furniture, but I wanted to be in her neighborhood and go to her grocery store and her bakery and walk on her street. And that's what I did for several years until I found this place.
With a collector's eye and a passion for antiques, she's composed a space that feels as refined and enduring as the jewelry she designs.
I've brought in a lot of lighting in my carry-on, including this little baby wood chandelier that I found at the Marché aux Puces this summer. It was quite a project to have it electrified and hang it here, but I did bring it in my LL Bean tote bag.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name is Maud Cabot. I'm a jewelry designer. Welcome to my little apartment in New York. Working in New York is, as anyone who works in New York knows, that it's not for the faint of heart. And since my mother died in 2012, I needed a place of my own to stay when I was in New York, because I live in Boston more full-time than I live here. And I set about making an apartment that's not totally dissimilar from my mother's apartment, which was always a very warm and comfortable place filled with our family memories and furniture and antiques and things that we've had in our family, for decades and decades, my entire life. And I took many of those things from my mother's apartment after she died, and now they're here. And so I have a place that I feel surrounded in warmth and calm and memories of, my life growing up. When I first saw this apartment, it was painted all white. I'm not really a decorator, I'm a designer, but I am very much a collector of things. I particularly love souvenirs and mementos, furniture from my past, my mother's apartment, my grandmother's apartment. They were both New Yorkers, and many of the pieces of furniture in this apartment came from them. I'm very sentimental, and every time I'm here, I'm thinking of my mother and my grandmother and their apartments and the happy times I spent there. Old things just have so much soul and so much history. So the decoration in this apartment and everywhere I live is a reflection of my love of antiques and designs that have stood the test of time. Welcome to my living room. This sofa belonged to my grandparents, who lived on Riverside Drive, in the 40s and 50s and 60s. It's a Carlisle style sofa. It's been recovered more times than I can count. This latest fabric is by Pierre Frey. It's called George's. I love it. It's like an antique velvet. It's just one of the most durable and comfortable, soft fabrics. I have added all the accessories that you see, the English stools, but I use them as tables, and they move really easily. I'm obsessed with fireplaces. I think the thing that really drew me, apart from the location, which is very convenient to my work, is the wood-burning fireplace. It was something that I really wanted having a fire in the evenings after work really brings so much life into the apartment. I love antique screens and andirons. I particularly love the firebacks, which is the piece of carved lead that you see in the back. I just think decorating a fireplace is a lot of fun. I found all of the pieces antiquing. I try to go antiquing at least once a week. This is a copy of Hieronymus Bosch, Garden of Earthly Delights. It was in my mother's apartment in Chelsea for many, many years. It's quite a bacchanalia if you look at the figures in the painting, but I like it because it was in my mother's apartment, and my mother she had very particular taste in art and was very certain of her taste, but I like it a lot because she liked it. So I do have a collection of her books that I selected from a much larger collection in her apartment. One of her favorite authors was Graham Greene, so I have her Graham Greene books. I also have a copy of the Scarsdale diet because she went on the Scarsdale diet in the 70s and lost about 40 pounds overnight. And I came back from boarding school and hardly recognized her. She has a lot of books about dogs. She had two little Shih Tzus. Their names were Pansy and Rocket. Pansy and Rocket were her babies. She was a book illustrator, and I think she told me she had illustrated every animal on the planet, every mammal, every fish, everything. So I do have some of the books that she illustrated here. They were children's science books, and they're beautiful. You know, things are wonderfully comforting, and also things don't talk back. And that may be why this apartment looks the way it does. It's a collection of things that are meaningful to me. After my mother died, I got a very small apartment near her in Chelsea, but I quickly became aware that it wasn't the most practical place for me to live. It was far from work, but I wanted to stay near my mother's neighborhood as a way of mourning my mother, being closer to her memory. I was not very emotive about, mourning my mother to other people, but privately, it took me a long time, to really come to terms with her death. And I wanted to be near not only her furniture, but I wanted to be in her neighborhood and go to her grocery store and her bakery and walk on her street. And that's what I did for several years until I found this place. I came here in 2021, so right at the height of COVID, and everybody was moving out of this building, and I moved in. There's hardly anything in this apartment that's new. I mean, I guess the wallpaper's new and some of the fabrics are new, but all the actual movable things are things with a lot of memory and sentimentality for me. I had shades made by Carlos de la Puente, who's here in New York City, and Carlos has the most incredible collection of lighting of anyone I know. I do love antique glass, especially when the glass is very mottled. I think it's called foxing. It has a patina on it, but the mirrors that I have typically are not for checking your reflection. They're more for refracting light and they just bring a soft sparkle into the room. Right on that little corner by the door, I had a little lipstick mirror, and it was so modeled that I couldn't even look into, I couldn't see myself when I looked into it, so I have to get another one. And that could take 5 years. I don't know how, when I'll find it. I'm looking for it, but I haven't found it yet. Now I think there are 30 people on a wait list to come into this little building. So it's quite a place. And the woman on the top floor has been here since 1984. She's wonderful, and she raised her children here, and she's still here. And I love living on the Upper East Side. It's just been wonderful. I love all the accessories on a bar. I think it's a lot of fun to put together. The silver tray came from a shop in New Orleans. These little things came from a wonderful little shop in New Canaan. She's a wonderful English woman, and she has so many little silver objects and bowls and things. And so whenever I'm in New Canaan, I always stop in and find something wonderful. These are little cocktail napkins that I had made. Sometimes when I have friends over, they inadvertently take them home with them. We have to get together sooner rather than later so I can get my napkin back. And anyway, they're kind of sweet. This is a campaign chest that I actually bought here in New York at an antique shop. I just thought it was perfect in this room. So it became the bar, and I can store things in it. If you want a little decorator trick and you want to hide the smoke alarm, you can just take a little piece of wallpaper like I did and put it over the outside of the alarm, and you'll never know it's there. So this campaign chest, as soon as I saw it, I thought this can be the top of the bar because it's wide enough. And then as soon as I had the chest, I could build out from there. I found the silver tray, actually in New Orleans, and then, had fun shopping on Live Auctioneers for the perfect little silver ice bucket. Everything in New York, has to be sort of on the small side because space is such a concern. So I'm always looking for little things, and I happen to love little things. They're sort of dear, tiny pieces of furniture and tiny little bowls and everything like that. So it wasn't too hard. I love these cut crystal little jars, I guess, and I have a little collection of those. So there's one of them, and then I have some little mint julep cups back there, and some little silver bowls and objects. I think it's nice to have a beautiful cocktail glass. These are from Baccarat. These are just little sort of Da Vinci posters. They were in my bedroom in Duxbury growing up. I had twin beds, and they were over each headboard, and so I've had them for a long time, and I like them. And this is a photograph. It reminds me of my mother's work, actually, sort of graphic looking. It's not an etching, it's an actual photograph, but it has kind of a similar feeling to some of the art that my mother made. I really don't like moving. I tend to stay in the same places for as long as possible. Transforming a little painted white apartment with a white mantle, wasn't a leap of faith for me at all, because when I moved here, I imagined that I would be here for a long time. I asked the landlord if I could wallpaper, and his answer was, you can do anything you want, but you just have to return it to the way it looked, when you received it. So that means taking the wallpaper down. But if I stayed in this apartment for 10 years or 15 years, I will have certainly got my money's worth and lived in a place that was much more personal than just white walls. So this was my mother's partner's desk, actually. Unfortunately, I can't use the other side of it because it's against the sofa. I'm a great lover of brown furniture. This is where, I sit and write correspondence, thank you notes, and I tend to sit at the dining room table, which is a great big piece also when I'm designing. If I'm making a piece of jewelry and I need to spread out, I would sit here rather than here. But this is a place where I write. And this beautiful lamp came from Carlos de la Puente. It cost a lot more than I wanted to spend, but I couldn't live without it, and I admire it every day. This shade is what's called capiz. It's shell. Actually, it has shell on the inside, and it's all hand-stitched, and it's just fantastic. I love this kind of graphic sunrise. And I have, some pretty trays from John Darien. I'm a great fan of John Darien's aesthetic and decoupage, and I follow him religiously, and he's also just the nicest man in the world. Never miss a chance to say hello to him. This is Il Papiro, if you don't know, the old Florentine paper company that does these marbleized papers and then has a line of accessories. I think the only shop that exists now. It's on Worth in Palm Beach, and I love Il Papiro, so I have it everywhere. And then here I have my little man. I love this little painting. I bought this at Gerald Bland Antiques here in New York. If you haven't been to Gerald Bland's showroom, you have to go there. It's a collection of beautiful objects, antiques, and art. I just think Gerald Bland has an amazing eye. These little cabinets came from an antique shop in Oyster Bay. I can't remember the name, but I thought that they really worked with my aesthetic. Oh, these came from an antique shop in West Palm Beach. I have a pair of them, and I got them with Tess Atkinson, who's always wonderful to be reminded of. This is by a local Boston artist. I bought this recently, actually. Her name is Kelly Carmody. I've been to her studio. I think she's a fantastic artist. This is the only piece I have by her, but I would like to collect more. So Kelly, if you see this, don't forget about me. But I thought this painting went really well in this room, and reminds me of Maine at night. There isn't a lot of light pollution where I am in Maine, so the sky is just filled with stars and moonlight. This painting is by a New Hampshire artist. It's very, very dark. I have two others in Boston that are a bit lighter, but I still love this painting by New Hampshire artist Anne Dufresne. I haven't been in touch with Anne in a few years, and I know she moved to Italy at some point, but I would love to see her again. She's an incredible painter. This room really lends itself to two distinct spaces, one side for dining, one side, for sitting. And I wanted to orient the furniture around the fireplace. Having a wood-burning fireplace is so wonderful, particularly in New York City. And so the sofa was always going to face the fireplace. But I feel that the sofa needed to be anchored more, and this big chunk of wood really does the job. It's heavy, it's sturdy. When you sit in the sofa, even if you kind of fall onto the sofa is not going to move. It's totally anchored by this desk. So I grew up in Duxbury, Massachusetts, on the South Shore. My parents were not sort of the typical Duxbury parents. Both my parents were artists. They met at Pratt in Brooklyn. My mother was a book illustrator. She did copperplate etching. Some of the etchings are here, actually, in my guest room. My father was a fine art photographer and graphic designer. So growing up with artist parents, you know, art was a big theme in our house. My parents were very knowledgeable about art and art history. My mother actually, this is kind of a crazy story, in the 70s drove with two friends of hers from Duxbury to Santa Fe to meet the painter George O'Keeffe, uninvited. They drove up her driveway, knocked on her door, a maid came to the door and greeted them and said, you know, who are you? And they said, we're artists. We went to Pratt. George O'Keeffe is our favorite painter. Could we say hello to her? And the maid said that George O'Keeffe was taking a nap, but they should come back later, so they did. And they rang the doorbell again, or knocked on the door, and George O'Keeffe answered the door. And she didn't invite them in, but she took them into her garden and walked around in her garden with them for an hour and talked about art and making art and being an artist. And, you know, I think I was 10 years old when this happened, and I remember thinking, my mother is so different from all the other mothers in Duxbury. And at the time, I didn't like that very much, but now I really admire my mother for having the temerity and just really the courage and the guts to just go out there and meet someone who inspired her. And I've actually done the same in my own work. I've forced certain relationships with, you know, famous people to meet them and pay homage to them and to be inspired. So this area, this dining area, is a collection of antiques from all over the place, really. Starting with the dining room table, came from Autrefois Antiques in Brookline. Francesca sourced this for me. I was looking for it for a long time, and it's perfect. She has just an amazing eye. So if you ever get a chance, you're in Boston area, go and visit her. The chairs and the chandelier came from Balzac Antiques on Magazine Street in New Orleans. I was there for Jazz Fest with a group of girlfriends, let's say 2017, and I bought these pieces there and didn't use them for a few years, and finally they found a home here. The chairs came from an auction at Doyle Auction House here in New York. I had the seat covers made with a Ralph Lauren fabric that surprisingly matches the wallpaper, which is an English wallpaper, kind of an arts and crafts style that I like. These sconces came from Carlos de la Puente. They are Caldwell and were made in the late 19th century here in New York. They are Eglomisé, which is a treatment of painting on glass, and they're a pair, even though the images are different, of British ships with French names. Anyway, they're wonderfully intact, and I love nautical art and antiques, so I was really happy to find these from Carlos. This piece came from an antique shop on 23rd Street, very far east. It's called Tapestry Source, and they have amazing needlepoint, antique tapestries, and also odd pieces of unusual art and pieces like this, and I found that there. And I love this detail up here of this kind of stylized flower frieze at the top. So these little tin trays came from an antique shop in the South End of Boston. John Barry, who is a well-known designer and antique stealer. These were in a big basket on the floor of the shop. I think they were $1 each. I just love them. I thought they would be perfect with this paper and in this room that has a lot of black accents, sort of a faded black accent in this room. And I think they work perfectly as a decoration element. This bamboo kind of corner étagère was found on Charles Street in Boston, and I put it in my car. I put the seats down and brought it down here, and I think it's perfect here. I would have liked a pair for the other side, but she only had one, and so that's okay, I don't mind. Let's see, this is a photograph that my mother bought at a gallery in Chelsea, and I was with her the day that she bought it, and she loved the image because it was very graphic, but also she said that the woman in the photograph reminded her, of herself. So now it reminds me of my mother, and I framed it with an antique kind of arts and crafts style frame, and I think it looks wonderful in this room. In 1998, my then husband, Andrew, gave me a string of pearls from Shreve, Crump and Lowe. And I remember thinking, oh, these are very pretty, but they were very simple. And I said to Andrew, maybe I could design something that was a little bit more reflective of me. And he was very encouraging. And so I did, and with his help, I made a small collection of jewelry that I showed my friends in Boston and New York. That's really how it started in 1998, just a little collection of about 6 or 8 things, necklaces and earrings and rings, and I've been doing it ever since. And now I'll show you my bedroom. Now we're in my bedroom. I love making up a bed and having a lot of pillows and special sheets and blankets and everything. So that is definitely this. The headboard and the curtain fabric is Braconnier, which is a French company now owned by Pierre Frey, and they make 19th century French reproduction fabrics and papers, and I'm just crazy about them. These fabrics are all by Braconnier. This actually came from both these pieces came from Tapestry Source. This is an antique needlepoint pillow. My daughter calls these granny blankets, and I'm crazy about my granny blankets. They're sort of satin and wonderfully old-fashioned, extremely comfortable. They come from a company, Laron Linens. Go there and have a great time looking at swatches and designs. These botanical prints, I think, came from a book. I bought them already framed at an auction at Doyle Galleries here in New York, Doyle Auction House, and I love them. This picture here, actually, in the niche, is a new acquisition for me. I found it in Massachusetts on the North Shore, in Ipswich, actually, at David Nelligan Antiques. It's a detail from a piece of furniture that was framed, hand-painted, obviously, and I just think it's beautiful. And here it is in New York now. This And this was a wedding present. These are lamps that I brought home in my duffel bag from Venice. I've brought in a lot of lighting in my carry-on, including this little baby wood chandelier that I found at the Marché aux Puces this summer. It was quite a project to have it electrified and hang it here, but I did bring it in my LL Bean tote bag, and here it is, and I love it. So I've had this for so long. It's come everywhere with me. This was in my bedroom in Duxbury, Massachusetts, so it's something I've had for a really long time. I don't know where my mother got it. It was very similar to my bedroom furniture and my beds and dressers, and I love it. So here it is, this lamp. I don't know if it's anything at all, but it was in my bedroom in Duxbury as well. I've changed the shade a few times, and just reminds me. So anyway, it's a little dogwood flower painting. This paper is by a company called Le Manac. The company's owned by Pierre Frey now. It's an old French fabric and wallpaper company, and this is one of their patterns, and I felt that coming into this apartment and seeing both bedrooms from the entrance, that the papers or the rooms should relate to one another in terms of decoration. I did not want them to be vastly different from each other. I felt that, you know, the eye would travel across the room and into the bedrooms, and they should balance each other, which they do. I did this room with this sort of blue and kind of rose or lavender kind of color. In the other room is the same paper in pink and yellow tones. So, and I like that effect very much. I've done that before in other houses where you see two rooms at the same time. I think it's nicer if they relate to each other in terms of decoration. So, and both rooms have these braconnier fabrics for curtains, and I did a very sort of old-fashioned valance and curtain style with tiebacks, and these were designed by Polly Lewis, who has a decoration company in Boston, but she works in New York and a lot of other places, and she's a friend and very talented, and she helps me solve decoration problems and gives me lots of ideas too. I think in terms of color, I gravitate towards very warm colors. In fact, I was hesitant to use blue in this room because I've always felt that blue is kind of a cooler color, and I'm petrified of being cold. So I tend to gravitate more towards reds and yellows and browns and very rich, warm colors. I've been coming away from that aesthetic a bit more. Obviously, this room has a bit of blue in it. I did a blue carpet. You don't see a lot of it, but you know that there's a blue carpet here. And I recently have done a room in Boston almost entirely in blue, a bedroom. And so I am embracing blue more now, but typically my aesthetic has always been more towards warmer colors. When you live in the Northeast, you know, we do have a long winter, and feeling warm is important to me, and it's reflective in the fabrics and surroundings that I choose. This is my dresser, and I mostly just keep my jewelry that I'm wearing on this dresser. And you can see here's some of the material that I work with. These are shells, actually mother of pearl, and I wear these quite a lot. I love shell jewelry, and have made a lot of different pieces, necklaces and earrings and even rings with shells. These are black Australian opal, and also a really interesting color combination. This is actually a little bit bluer, this is a little bit greener, and I love the idea of wearing sort of slightly mismatched earrings, either in size or color or both. I think that that's kind of a fun thing to do, and just shows the kind of one-of-a-kindness of a piece that I love that idea. Everything that I make is handmade. I do have some pieces that are cast, but a lot of hands go into even a cast piece. It has to be polished and set and vetted by me. Every piece I make is something that I look at and decide if it's going to go out into the world or not. And this is a much older design, but one that has stood the test of time for me anyway. It's called the web ring, and I wear it quite a bit. It's not for everybody because it's quite wide on the finger, but I set it with some small diamonds, and I do really like the web ring, the design of it. These earrings were inspired by Cubist art and some of the pieces that I've seen by Picasso, and they're obviously different sizes, which was due to the size of the coin pearls, this one being significantly larger than this one, but I don't think it matters very much, at least not to me, and I wear them all the time. I love them. So these are some chokers. These are sort of a work in progress right now. I've made these chokers. This is 18 karat white gold. It's been lightly oxidized with diamonds all the way around, with a bead setting, and so it's definitely very Victorian in design, Victorian style in design, but I do like it in its simplicity just this way, but I'm now going to work on a charm, to hang a charm off of it that you could put on and off if you so desired, and I think it might bring a little bit more interest to the piece. I also did it in 18 karat yellow gold and emeralds. So I'll be working on some charms for these pieces in the coming months. This painting by Penny Graham, who is an English artist living in London, I love so much about it, but one of the things that I love is that it's very much in the style of 19th century French knobby painters like Bonnard and Vuillard, who painted a lot of humble sort of interiors. And obviously I love interior design and interior feeling, and I think that this painting really speaks to me because of that, because of my love of interiors and the peace and tranquility one can have in one's home like this. So this is Penny's living room and dining room in London, and we had lunch together at that table, and so it will always remind me of that day and how wonderful it was to be with her at her home. Now I'll show you my guest room. This is my guest room. I would say my most frequent guest is my daughter. She actually loves to come and stay in New York. She has a lot of friends here, and I love when she's here, when I'm here. So I made this room with her in mind, cheerful and warm and comfortable. I have another granny blanket here, and the fabrics are also Braconnier. The wallpaper is the other colorway, one of the other colorways of the paper in my bedroom. This is Le Manac in yellow and kind of plum color. I have a little antique table that belonged to my mother. It's so fragile, you can't even touch it or it'll fall apart. I found this needlepoint bench at an antique shop on the North Shore in Massachusetts, and just works perfectly in here with everything else. Oh, I can speak about these wonderful cotton woven runners that you see on the floor. These are Woodard and Greenstein, and they are an amazing manufacturer of rugs here in New York, and I have them in lots of places in Maine and in Boston. They went out of business last year, and I was in a panic until I read on Instagram that a well-known designer, David Netto, actually bought the company and kept the whole operation alive. And you know, I personally am very relieved, so thank you, David, because I love Woodard and Greenstein rugs. So the etchings are by my mother, and it gives you a sense of the style of art that she did, copperplate etching, and I really love these two of girls sort of standing outside, I guess, in a rocky area, maybe in the Southwest. My mother was a great fan of the Southwest. The little mirrors that you see, these are Eglo-Mise also. They actually reminded me very much of my friend KK. I found them in an antique store in Maine, Wiscasset actually, and I love them. They're not for gazing into, they're really just to reflect light, and I think they're really beautiful. This drop leaf table was actually a dining table in my former apartment in New York, and it was a bit low for a dining table. I like it much better as a kind of elongated side table, but it's a wonderful old oak table, antique, and this beautiful pink lamp with stylized birds came from Carlos de la Puente. I did the shade, but Carlos had the lamp, and goes perfectly in this room. This came from an auction, I can't remember where or when, a long time ago. I love layers of pattern, color, and design. I do think that it's a passion of mine to try to create that sort of look of multi-layered design. It's not always easy to do, and I have, you know, made tons of mistakes trying to do it, but I think that that would be my aesthetic. I do like pattern upon pattern and a lot of very kind of rich, warm color. When someone comes to my apartment, I want them to feel welcome and warm, and I want to give them a sort of a visual feast of beautiful things to look at, things I've collected. Everything has a story and history, and it's just a very kind of warm and comfortable environment to be in, and I hope that my guests feel that when they come here. I mean, as a jewelry designer, I do sweat the small stuff, the small details. I feel that this apartment is like a little jewel box, especially the liberal use of velvet in this apartment. Now, let me show you my kitchen, the tiniest kitchen in New York City. So this was just a little kind of trick that I decided to use to separate the living and dining area from the front door. It just helps create a little more privacy and warmth in the room. So it's just like that. This makes it a little warmer. This is what I call a Paris doormat. Everyone in France seems to have this style of doormat. It's just a kind of brown cocoa mat with a red border, and they come in all different sizes, and you can get them at BHV in Paris. I bring them home in my duffel bag. I'm surprised that they're not sold anywhere in the US because I think they're very attractive, but if they are sold in the US, tell me. But I do have fun bringing them home in my duffel bag. This is my little kitchen. It's the tiniest thing ever. There's no room to put the pots away, so I got this little pegboard idea actually from a photograph of Julia Child's kitchen in Boston. Many years ago, obviously, and I think it works really well. The paper is by Braconnier. It's called Bengali bird paper, and it's one of my favorites. I have it in a couple of different rooms. I'll tell you what I make here. I make coffee and toast. This is really not a chef's kitchen. My friend Mary Laurie Cece used to live in this building directly below me and could cook an entire Thanksgiving dinner for 16 people from her kitchen, which is the exact same footprint as this kitchen. So I know it can be done, I just haven't done it. But the curtain idea I got from my friend KK Auchincloss, who had curtains like this in her kitchen in Maine, and I just love them. I think the little eyelet fabric is adorable. The typical go-to meal when I'm by myself and come home after work is this. It is the easiest thing to make. I get these at the grocery store. It's called Morton Williams, and yes, I just make these little dumplings in a pan and put Netflix on and a fire, and I'm, extremely happy. So that's all I really need. Sometimes I'll stop at Bar Italia or Le Charlot, but that would be my go-to dinner at home. I just watched Narcos, and now I know it sounds like a strange, idea to get from a program about Pablo Escobar, but I'm obsessed with South America now, and I want to do a huge trip in South America with my family, starting in Colombia. If you haven't seen Narcos and Narcos Mexico, they're a fantastic series. They're old. I think they're from 2015 or 2017. They both have beautiful soundtracks of Latin music and great acting, and yeah. The word home to me is a place of refuge, safety, warmth, calm, memories, and family. I need my home to be a place where I can just exhale and feel calm. And after working in New York, I just want to relax and come home and have quiet and warmth. And I think Also, I should say, everybody else would, say I was remiss if I didn't say I need a lot of order in my home. I like things to be very orderly. This gives me a great sense of peace and calm. I do not like chaos. I live in the most chaotic places in the world, but yes, that's important to me.